What if I told you that in just the last few days, decisions coming out of Washington could completely reshape how families across America get support and fundamentally change how federal power is used on American streets? This isn't speculation. This isn't clickbait. This is happening right now. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what it means for you, your family, and this country. Stay with me because I'm going to break down every single detail, show you both sides of the argument, and give you the information that mainstream media is either ignoring or spinning beyond recognition. This affects millions of Americans directly and tens of millions more indirectly. You deserve to know the truth. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, first of all, thank you for clicking on this video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we don't just cover the news here, we break it down in a way that actually makes sense. We cut through the political spin, the partisan talking points, and the noise to give you what you actually need to know. Now let's get straight into it, because there's a lot to cover. Two major announcements have sent absolute shockwaves through the political landscape this week, and honestly, the implications are massive whether you support these moves or whether you're completely opposed to them. We're talking about decisions that will be studied in history books, debated in classrooms, and felt in households across all 50 states. Let me set the stage for you. The political climate right now is as divided as it's ever been. You've got people on one side saying the federal government has grown too large, too powerful, and too involved in the daily lives of American citizens. On the other side, you've got people arguing that federal programs and federal presence are essential safety nets that protect vulnerable communities and maintain order. Into this environment, we now have two announcements that are pouring gasoline on an already burning fire. Let's start with the federal troops situation, because this one is generating headlines everywhere. And I want you to understand not just what happened, but why it matters. The administration has announced the withdrawal of federal military personnel from certain operations that were previously authorized under emergency provisions. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of political jargon, so let me break it down in plain English. Over the past several years, federal troops have been deployed to various locations across the United States for different reasons. Some were sent to assist with border security. Others were deployed during civil unrest in major cities. Some have been involved in combating drug trafficking operations. These deployments happened under various legal authorities, including the Insurrection Act provisions and other emergency powers granted to the executive branch. What we're seeing now is a significant pullback of these forces. The administration is essentially saying that these deployments have served their purpose or that they were never appropriate to begin with, depending on which official you ask and when they're speaking. Now here's where it gets complicated, and this is what nobody else is really explaining properly. The legal framework for deploying federal troops on American soil is actually incredibly complex. The Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 generally prohibits the use of federal military forces for law enforcement purposes. However, there are exceptions. The Insurrection Act, for example, allows the president to deploy troops in certain circumstances. There are also provisions for using National Guard forces, which operate under a different set of rules. What the administration is doing now is essentially reinterpreting where those lines should be drawn. They're saying that previous deployments pushed those boundaries too far, or alternatively, that the situations requiring federal presence no longer exist. Let me give you the perspective from those who support this decision. Supporters are calling this a victory for constitutional principles. They argue that the founders of this nation were deeply suspicious of standing armies and federal military power being used against American citizens. They point to the 10th Amendment, which reserves powers not granted to the federal government to the states and the people. From this perspective, what we're seeing is a return to how things should be. State governors and local authorities should handle their own affairs. If there's crime, the local police handle it. If there's unrest, the state National Guard can be called up under the governor's authority. The federal government, in this view, should step back and respect these boundaries. There's also an economic argument here. Deploying federal troops costs money. Maintaining that presence costs money. By pulling back, the administration can argue they're being fiscally responsible, reducing federal spending, and eliminating what they see as unnecessary bureaucratic overreach. I've heard from many of you in the comments on previous videos who hold this view, and I want you to know that your perspective is represented here. This isn't about me telling you what to think. It's about laying out all sides so you can make your own informed decision. Now let's look at the other side of this debate. because there are serious concerns being raised. Critics are arguing that this pullback could have dangerous consequences. They point to specific examples where federal presence made a meaningful difference in maintaining order or combating serious criminal organizations. They argue that some threats are simply too large or too well organized for state and local authorities to handle on their own. Think about drug cartels operating across multiple states. Think about criminal networks that don't respect state boundaries. Think about situations where local authorities might be overwhelmed, outgunned, or even compromised. These are the scenarios where critics say federal involvement isn't just helpful, it's essential. There's also concern about what message this sends. Some argue that pulling back federal troops signals weakness or retreat, potentially emboldening criminal organizations or hostile actors who might see an opportunity in reduced federal presence. Law enforcement officials in some areas have expressed concern about gaps in coverage. They've relied on federal support for certain operations, and now they're being told that support is going away. How do they fill that gap? With what resources? These are questions that don't have easy answers. Then there's the political dimension. Critics suggest this is less about constitutional principles and more about political messaging. They argue the administration is playing to its base, making symbolic moves that sound good in speeches, but could have real-world consequences that aren't being fully considered. Here's what I think is important for everyone to understand, regardless of where you fall politically. This isn't a simple issue with a clear right and wrong answer. Both sides have legitimate points. The question is how you weigh those points against each other. Federal power versus state authority is a debate as old as America itself. The founders argued about it. We fought a civil war over aspects of it. We're still arguing about it today. This latest development is just the newest chapter in a very old book. Now let me transition to the second major story. And honestly, this one might affect more families directly than anything else we've discussed this year. I'm talking about the freeze on childcare funds. If you're a parent, if you have young children, if you rely on any form of childcare assistance, you need to pay very close attention to what I'm about to explain. The administration has announced a freeze on federal subsidies that have been flowing to childcare programs across the country. This isn't a small program we're talking about. This is massive. We're talking about Head Start programs that serve nearly 1 million children from low-income families. We're talking about childcare development block grants that help states provide subsidies to working families. We're talking about billions of dollars that have been flowing into communities to help parents work while their children are cared for. Let me give you some numbers because I think numbers help us understand the true scale of what we're dealing with. The federal government spends approximately $30 billion annually on various childcare and early education programs. Some estimates put the number even higher when you include all the different funding streams. Head Start alone serves over 800,000 children across more than 1,600 programs. The Child Care Development Fund helps around 1.4 million children each month. Now imagine what happens when that funding suddenly stops flowing. The administration's stated reasoning centers on what they describe as inefficiencies and waste in how these funds have been distributed. Officials have used words like accountability, reform, and fiscal responsibility. They claim this freeze is temporary and designed to allow for a comprehensive review of these programs. The stated goal is to ensure taxpayer dollars are being used effectively and reaching the families who need them most. On its face, that sounds reasonable, right? Nobody wants government waste. Nobody wants programs that aren't working. If there are inefficiencies, shouldn't we fix them? But here's the problem, and this is where it gets really difficult for real families. Programs like Head Start and childcare subsidies don't operate with huge reserves of cash sitting in the bank. They operate on thin margins, often month to month. Teachers need to be paid. Rent needs to be paid. Utilities need to be paid. Food needs to be purchased. These are ongoing expenses that don't pause just because federal funding is being reviewed. I've been reading reports from childcare providers across the country, and the picture is concerning. Some centers are already warning that they may have to close their doors within weeks if funding doesn't resume. Others are talking about laying off staff, reducing hours, or limiting enrollment. Now think about what this means for a working parent. Imagine you're a single mother working a job that pays $15 an hour. After taxes, you're bringing home maybe $2,000 a month. Without subsidized childcare, Full-price care for a toddler could easily cost $1,200 to $2,000 monthly, depending on where you live. In some cities, it's even more. The math simply doesn't work. You can't pay full price for childcare on that salary and still afford rent, food, and everything else. So what do? Some parents will be forced to leave their jobs entirely. Some will try to patch together informal care arrangements with family or neighbors. Some will leave children in situations that aren't ideal but are all they can afford. None of these outcomes are good for families or for society. The economic ripple effects extend far beyond individual families too. Let me explain why. The childcare industry directly employs over 1 million workers in the United States. These are teachers, administrators, cooks, janitors, and countless others who depend on these jobs to support their own families. Most of these workers are women. Many are women of color. Many are themselves from low-income backgrounds. When childcare centers close, these workers lose their jobs. They stop spending money in their communities. They may need unemployment benefits or other assistance. The economic damage cascades outward in ways that aren't always immediately visible. But there's an even bigger economic story here about the parents who use childcare. When parents can't find affordable childcare, many are forced to leave the workforce. Studies have shown that the lack of affordable childcare costs the American economy billions of dollars annually in lost productivity and earnings. We're not talking about a small impact. We're talking about a serious drag on economic growth. Employers feel this too. They lose experienced workers who can't find childcare. They struggle to fill positions. Small businesses are particularly affected because they often don't have the resources to offer childcare benefits or flexible arrangements. So when we talk about freezing childcare funds, we're not just talking about a government program. We're talking about a fundamental piece of economic infrastructure that allows millions of parents to work and contribute to the economy. Now let me present the other perspective because it deserves consideration. Those who support this move argue that federal involvement in childcare has created problems of its own. They suggest that government subsidies have actually driven up the cost of childcare by distorting the market. When the government pumps money into any sector, prices tend to rise. We've seen this in healthcare. We've seen it in higher education. The argument is that childcare is no different. From this perspective, stepping back could actually encourage more private sector solutions. Without government subsidies creating an artificial floor, the market might find more efficient ways to deliver childcare services, innovation might flourish, prices might actually come down over time as providers compete for customers. There's also an argument about dependency. Some believe that government assistance programs, however well-intentioned, create cycles of dependency that are ultimately harmful to families. They argue that people are more resilient and capable than government programs give them credit for. Removing the assistance might encourage families to find their own solutions. Additionally, some point to concerns about what children are being taught in some of these programs. There have been debates about curriculum, about values, about whether Head Start and similar programs are actually providing quality education or simply warehousing children. These are legitimate concerns that some parents share. I want to be clear that I'm not personally advocating for any particular position here. My job is to present you with the information and the different perspectives so you can make up your own mind. You're intelligent adults. You can evaluate these arguments and decide what makes sense to you. What I will say is that the timing and implementation of this freeze matters enormously, even if you believe that federal childcare programs should be reformed or reduced or eliminated entirely. The way you do that matters. A sudden freeze with no warning gives families and providers no time to adjust. It creates chaos, uncertainty, and immediate harm even if the long-term goal is something different. Compare that to a gradual phase-out with clear communication and transition assistance. Same endpoint perhaps, but vastly different impact on real families trying to plan their lives. The administration has said this freeze is temporary, but temporary is a vague word. Temporary for how long? Weeks? Months? A year? Families need to make decisions now. Childcare providers need to make payroll now. The uncertainty itself is damaging even if funding eventually resumes. Now I want to zoom out and talk about what these two stories together tell us about the current moment in American politics. What we're witnessing is a fundamental re-examination of the federal government's role in American life. Both of these decisions reflect a philosophy that the federal government has grown too large, too involved, and too powerful. Whether you agree with that philosophy or not, It's important to understand that these aren't random decisions. They're part of a coherent worldview about how government should operate. Those who share this worldview believe they're restoring constitutional balance. They believe they're returning power to states, communities, and individuals where it belongs. They see themselves as correcting decades of federal overreach. Those who oppose this worldview see something very different. They see essential services being cut. They see vulnerable populations being abandoned. They see ideology being prioritized over practical consequences. This debate isn't going away. If anything, it's intensifying, and the outcome will shape American society for generations to come. Let me talk about what happens next, because I think that's what many of you are wondering. On the federal troops issue, we're likely to see legal challenges. Governors who wanted federal assistance may sue. Civil rights organizations may file lawsuits arguing that the withdrawals put certain communities at risk. This will play out in courts over the coming months and possibly years. States will also have to make decisions about how to fill any gaps. Some have robust National Guard forces and well-funded state police agencies, others don't. We may see significant variation in outcomes depending on where you live. On the childcare front, the immediate future is more urgent. If the freeze continues for more than a few weeks, we will start seeing program closures. Centers that can't make payroll will close. Teachers will be laid off. Parents will be scrambling. Congress could intervene, but that would require bipartisan cooperation, which is in short supply these days. Some members of Congress are already calling for emergency legislation to restore funding. Others are supporting the administration's review process. Getting anything through both chambers and signed into law is a heavy lift in the current environment. At the state level, governors and legislatures could try to backfill some of the lost federal funding. But state budgets are tight, and childcare is expensive. Most states simply don't have the fiscal capacity to replace federal dollars at scale. Some private organizations and philanthropies may step up to help specific programs or communities. We've already seen some charitable foundations announcing emergency grants, but private charity, while valuable, can't match the scale of federal investment. What can you do? I know many of you watch videos like this and feel frustrated because these seem like big, distant decisions made by powerful people far away. But you're not powerless. There are things you can do. First, stay informed. Knowledge is power. Understanding what's happening and why puts you in a better position to respond. Share information with friends, family, and community members who might not be paying attention. Second, contact your representatives. I know it feels like shouting into the void sometimes, but constituent contacts do matter. Staffers track the issues people call about. When enough people call about the same issue, it gets attention. Call your congressman. Call your senators. Call your state legislators and governor too, because state-level responses may be crucial. Third, engage locally. Attend school board meetings. Attend city council meetings. Participate in local politics where your voice has the most direct impact. The decisions made in Washington affect your community, but so do the decisions made at your town hall. Fourth, support organizations doing the work. If there are local childcare centers or community organizations you believe in, see if you can help. Volunteer time if you can't donate money. Spread the word about their work. Every bit helps. Fifth, vote. This is obvious but essential. Elections have consequences. The officials making these decisions were elected, and they can be replaced if voters choose to do so. I want to take a moment to address something directly. I know my audience is diverse. Some of you support these policy changes, some of you oppose them, some of you aren't sure what to think. That's okay. That's healthy. Democracy depends on people with different viewpoints engaging in good faith debate. What I ask is that we all approach these issues with honesty and empathy. Try to understand why people who disagree with you hold the views they do. Assume good faith until proven otherwise. Engage with the strongest version of opposing arguments rather than the weakest. We can have strong disagreements without hating each other. We can advocate passionately for our positions without demonizing those who see things differently. That's what I try to do on this channel, and I encourage you to bring that spirit to your own conversations. As I wrap up, I want to emphasize that the stories we've discussed today are still developing. The situation is fluid. Details will emerge. Policies may shift. Lawsuits will be filed. Debates will continue. I commit to you that we'll stay on top of these stories and bring you updates as they develop. This isn't a one-time video and then we move on. These issues matter too much for that. We'll follow the threads wherever they lead and give you the information you need to stay informed. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up. It really does help the channel and lets the algorithm know this is content worth sharing. It also lets me know what topics matter most to you, which helps me decide what to cover next. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. I want to know your perspective. Are you affected by either of these decisions? Do you support them, oppose them? Have questions I didn't address? I read the comments and I genuinely value hearing from you. Some of my best video ideas come from comment sections. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. We post regularly, breaking down the news that matters in a way that respects your intelligence and your time. For those of you who've been here from the beginning, thank you. Your support means everything. For those of you who are new, welcome to the community. I think you'll find this is a place where we can discuss difficult topics honestly and respectfully. Before I go, I want to leave you with one final thought. America has been through difficult periods before. We've navigated challenging transitions. We've survived deep divisions. We've come out the other side stronger than before. That doesn't mean the process is easy or painless, but it does mean that there's reason for hope even in challenging times. Stay engaged, stay informed, stay hopeful. The decisions being made today matter, and so does your voice in shaping what comes next. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this community. I'll see you in the next one.